We will start on a serious note with David Samson. You can check out and should check out his podcast, Nothing Personal. We are of the belief that no one is covering sports business the way that David Samson is. And I'm always telling you that sports business by the sports media is covered super shitty. And I'm telling you that Nothing Personal, if you want an inside look at the way that the machine works, you're going to get it from someone who's been inside it and negotiated the big deals. January 6th for me, David. I don't know how you feel about this, but the date feels not exactly like, but in my memory now, January 6th takes its place around 9/11 on dates I will remember having my worldview shaken, having what I thought America to be changed. And then in the years since, I've seen all the arguments that have made it feel like what was an insurrection or a riot or whatever the word is you want to use feel diluted or less than what we saw and felt, which was an attack on democracy. New York Times today, Jimmy Carter, one of the few living presidents, is writing, "I fear for our democracy." I've spent a lot of time over the last year as a child exile of communism worried about the democracy, because the things happening in this country, David, are the things that happened in Cuba when one day to the next, the currency changes and all of a sudden the people have no money and no power. And so when Jimmy Carter is writing, "I fear for our democracy" in the New York Times, and he's in his late 90s, and you are in the middle of January 6th right now, what's happened over the last year, not just in sports, but just what's happened over the last year to alter your viewpoint on what this country is and has been and what you thought it was versus what it is?
What scares me the most is that you say that started to be your feeling on January 6th. That's the biggest problem, Dan, is that so many people, you obviously included, were asleep for the years before that and the months before that and the weeks before that. January 6th was the culmination of a concerted plan by Trump to make sure that if he lost the election through voting and electors in the Electoral College, that the only way that he would have lost is if the election had been stolen or if there had been a mistake in the laws, how they were applied. He basically had forecast, along with other of his minions, exactly what would happen on January 6th. As a matter of fact, on the morning of January 6th, he gave a speech which said, we've got to fight like hell, or this country, this America, will not be the America that we want. And he was talking to you, trying to appeal to you, saying, I'm here in America because I don't want to be in Cuba, and I'm scared that we are going to be Cuba. Therefore, we have to believe that the only outcome of the election was that I won. So then all of a sudden, a bunch of idiots go to the Capitol and people mark that day as, oh my God, where did this come from? And now what do? Which means you weren't paying attention. So not only was it forecast, but what it proves is that what Trump was trying to accomplish, he couldn't accomplish through the way that it's supposed to be accomplished, which is what Gore tried to do in 2000. People use the courts all the time to try to make sure that the way elections happen are the right way, the legal way, and that all of the proper protocols are being followed. Instead, when that avenue was not going to work, and even he understood that that avenue wasn't going to work, he said, well, let's just try to keep saying something. How many of us do this in our lives? If you say it long enough, then you believe it to be true, and then you forget what actually was true or not true because it all gets clouded because of the number of times you've repeated the lie to yourself. Only hours later, on January 6th, when Trump said, ooh, I don't know that I had this in mind, everybody please go home. And then everyone went home. What scares me the most is that if there's enough people like you who didn't see this coming, then you won't be able to be part of the solution, which for me is in the ballot box. If there are enough elected officials who are not acknowledging that the election, while it may not have gone the way they wanted, was an election nonetheless, that's the fear. So instead of Jimmy Carter scaring you into thinking that there's no more democracy, which appeals exactly to people like you, why not look at what Mitt Romney said which is we ought to be taking a bigger look at the fact that we are all in peril if elected officials on both sides of the aisle don't recognize that the transfer of power from one party to the other back and forth, the way managers get hired and fired who are tough on players and who are easy on players, managers or not, that back and forth is exactly what America is. That's what is being put into jeopardy, not just on January 6th, but every day since, when there are so many people who still believe that the election was stolen and that somehow when you don't get what you want, you can fight for it. Then you are living in the place from whence you came.
I will not allow you to Monday morning quarterback this and say you weren't stunned to see people crawling over the Capitol in this country. And I won't allow you to sit here and say, no surprise there. I totally expected to see that in this country. That's something that I knew that was coming.
Well, Monday morning quarterback is when you look back at something that happened and then you change the way that you were looking at it before it happened, right? That's the definition of Monday morning quarterback. No, I am not telling you that I suspected that people would actually break the windows and that there would be deaths. What I did expect is that Trump would rally the morons, and that's what they were. Let's face it, everyone is calling this a coup, and I'm having arguments with people nonstop when I say it was not a coup. A coup is meant as an organized attempt to overthrow a government through military means and install a government of your choosing that was not the will of the people, but the will of the few. Those people, and if you watch a documentary 4 hours at the Capitol, which I reviewed on today's Nothing Personal, those people were not trying to be Speaker of the House. They were not trying to be the Vice President. They were trying to get selfies in the rotunda while getting stoned. They were putting on the cloak of the American flag, saying we are patriotic and we are fighting for our right as a country because with the Democrats in power, the way they got power, we are all in danger. They were all following Trump, and Trump was simply appealing to the fear that you just manifested. And that is one of the great mistakes that leaders make, is thinking that by scaring your constituents, you will get them to do that which you want. And the level of fear in our country right now is at an all-time high, not because of what happened on January 6th, because of the fear that what if it happens next time? What happens if the Republicans win the presidential nomination in 2024, and then the Democrats say, you know what, we're storming the Capitol, and this time we're going to do it in an organized way with a militia, with guns, and I would be mortified at that far more than what happened on January 6th.
Awkward segue. Commissioner Manfred and his influence over Major League Baseball and the MLB network specifically. Ken Rosenthal was not renewed. I wasn't under the. I had no idea that he was serving a suspension for his criticisms of Rob Manfred's handling of the coronavirus pandemic and how Major League Baseball marched on and how they operated in said pandemic. Rosenthal not brought back. He's still working for Fox Sports. He's still working for The Athletic. But this is a direct beef that he has with Rob Manfred. Where do you stand on this story?
Ken Rosenthal knew exactly what he was doing when he wrote every article he wrote for The Athletic, excuse me. And I want to make sure that people are very clear how this works. NFL Network, NBA Network, MLB Network, those are owned by owners. Jeffrey used to own 1/30 of MLB Network. He would watch MLB Network after a game, and he would call me and say, call him up. Our game was the 8th highlight of the night, and we had a great win. It should have been the 3rd highlight. Call Stugotz right now. Or this is 100% true. And guess what? 30 owners did the same thing.
No.
They would pay attention, every single one. I spoke to Tony Petitti about this numerous times for hours, about what it was like to field calls from PR people who worked for owners, or sometimes owners themselves, when they were criticized, when a trade was criticized, when a player was criticized, when they weren't getting enough minutes in the highlights, when they weren't enough topics on the network talk shows. It is so obvious why people don't go to MLB.com for any information. It's so obvious why people don't watch MLB Network for anything, because of course it's biased. Of course it's done by the owners. And if you think that Rob Manfred doesn't pay attention, you're wrong. Here's the big difference. Bud Selig would watch the network, and he would call a reporter or a writer or a talking head, scream at them for saying something that he didn't agree with, and then move on. Rob Manfred doesn't do that. And you know how close I am with Rob. And this hurts me to criticize him in this way, but I don't work for him. Rob Manfred is much more stealth. Rob Manfred's not going to call anybody, especially after his interview with you. He's not going to call anybody and criticize or get angry or yell. He will simply eliminate them. Ken Rosenthal knew from the beginning that his time at MLB Network was over, and he was totally fine with it.
Wait, is that what happened to us?
Years later,
You have no idea.
years later, that's what happened to us, the relationship. Maybe it would have happened to us if ESPN cared about baseball, but there's nothing about the way they cover baseball that would indicate to anybody, with A-Rod sitting in the middle of it and Matt Vasgersian fleeing the premises, that baseball is something that ESPN cares about.
They care about getting yelled at by Rob Manfred. They do.
Do you remember the interview that you did, and do you remember how that came about?
I remember.
You talk about it as a bad interview, but do you remember?
Do you remember the worst interview ever given by a commissioner?
I remember the blowback as well, and I remember that only climbed as high as a vice president in the company, and you can't get us fired by reaching a vice president in the company.
Well, I can't wait to speak to John Skipper about this, because if you think that John Skipper was not made aware of
He
what
wasn't
was going
there.
on
No,
at
he
that
wasn't
time,
there at the time.
it was
Otherwise,
Jimmy?
I don't know whether. I think they might have been president-less at the time. I think it might have been an interim period.
I know that attitudes changed when it started going up higher in the corporate chain. So
here's how the conversation goes. And I had spoken to Rob about this interview, and I spoke to his PR people about the interview because of their level of anger with how it went down. The blame was put on you for coming up with those questions, thinking that those questions were done purposefully to make him look bad, stupid, ill-informed, or simply not positive from a PR standpoint. And I said to Rob at the time, when you go on LeBatard, everybody knows that you're going to be asked questions, the exact ones you were asked. I prepared you, Rob, for the questions you were going to be asked, which I had spoken to him about before the interview. I spoke to Rob. How did I have any idea what you were going to ask? Do you have any idea how I would know that?
I don't.
Because I know you, and I know exactly the hurt you were feeling. I know exactly who you were trying to represent, the people of Miami and the baseball fans who had been so wronged, right? Because that's your position, that you had the devil amongst you, and you had to make it look as though you weren't liking me or didn't want any part of me with all of the people in your shipping container. So, of course, I told Rob, you are going to have to answer these questions. And he was not properly prepared. And instead of bridging and deflecting, he got defensive. He said things that were incorrect. And you went as far as you could go without him hanging up.
I don't like Samson prepping the commissioner.
yeah, you're playing both sides.
Let me tell you something. If you had any idea how often I do that, it would shock you. I'm not right-hand dominant. You have to be ambidextrous in the media business.
Hell yeah.
It's critical to play both sides, because therefore it's like
I love
betting on
both
every
sides,
horse in a
David.
race. How do you? By the way, Stu has an entire career
Yes.
because he plays both sides.
Yep.
Do you have any opinion, though, beyond, okay, the owners get to decide, they control, MLB Network is a propaganda arm. How do you just feel about it? Watching it happen, do you have any other opinions about the idea that Manfred would take the hit publicly on, I am going to eliminate someone who criticizes me, and it'd just be easier to keep Rosenthal writing things behind a paywall that people aren't reading than he got more publicity, bad publicity from doing that than he did from anything Rosenthal was writing, criticizing him.
Manfred could care less about what anybody else thinks other than the people who pay him, which is exactly how it should be. And they've got a philosophy in Major League Baseball that the only people who will work at the network are those people who are willing to say and do the things that they are told to do and say. And if you cross that, you're gone.
This is a local hour, technically, so I want to run something by you that was that was a little weird to actually experience ourselves, because sports gambling was legalized in Florida for what was a one hot minute for the Hard Rock sports betting app. And I thought that once the toothpaste came out the tube, it was impossible to put back in. However, the Seminole Tribe of Florida that owns Hard Rock had exclusivity from a pact that they made with the state government. A federal court with obviously a lot of lobbyists, including lobbyists probably representing representing DraftKings, urging the federal government to get involved and make sure that this was open and not a monopoly from the Seminole Tribe. They were actually successful. The Seminole Tribe asked for a stay, and that stay was denied. And now there is no sports gambling legalized in the state of Florida, and we're all kind of wondering what happens next, where you have all these competing factions, including our wonderful soulmates over at DraftKings. And I think for the consumer, what's best for the consumer is probably a free and open marketplace where you can get the best promos and all that. What do you make of all this, David?
Does 50 million make you a soulmate?
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
50 million will make me do crazy things for DraftKings. I mean, crazy. I mean, things going in places.
I love that
What?
because it's just business, right?
With both hands.
With both hands all in, right? I like it. All hands on deck. It's all about DraftKings. They are our soulmates. I'm in. I love if you pay for it, you get loyalty. Here's what the Seminoles, the mistake they made. During this process, they actually had the belief, because of their advisors, that they would have the monopoly. If they had start, then everything would have been fine.
Let's
But they wanted
hang
more
on,
than
David.
a head start. They wanted
Dave, one
the
sec.
only
Hang
start.
on, David. We
The
lost
only thing the state
David.
should have given them was that
Hold
head
on,
start.
David.
Hold on,
David,
Dave,
hold
one
on.
sec.
Hold
Hold
on.
on.
You broke up there for a
froze
minute.
there in the middle of the chunk of your point. So can you just pick that answer up from the very beginning?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Yep.
So that was weird. You guys froze. Sorry, I'm back. The biggest mistake that the Seminoles made was believing that they had the right to a monopoly. The only thing they should have been given was a head start, and that's the only thing they should have asked for. But by asking to be not just the first, but the only, they ended up with too big a money grab that there was no way any federal court was going to allow, because they are witnessing what's happening with gambling, with online gambling around the country. You cannot make it even an oligopoly. So therefore, the Seminoles made the bet, pun intended, and now not only did they lose their head start, but what they've done is actually lost revenue, because they could have been booking bets this whole time. And as you know, as DraftKings, the reason why they have $50 million to give you is because it comes from all of your listeners, because the house always wins. So the Seminoles and their greed is what's costing. But the way this ends is there will be sports betting in Florida, and it will be available on all platforms, not just the Seminoles.
Well, if you want to help out with that cause, including our soulmates over at DraftKings, why don't you head over? And I love the posturing that this has to be done to get people engaged. You go to FloridaEducationChampions.com, and it seems a little archaic because you have to, on the website, request a mailed petition, right? You can't just fill it out on the website. They make it purposefully difficult like this. And you have to do things like make sure to tout education, because if you tax sports gambling, that tax money goes to funding public education. So it's all very interesting posturing and archaic purposely. But David,
Tell them again. Tell them.
FloridaEducationChampions.com. There's no promo code Dan here, but there need to be actual
There should be.
signatures.
There should be a
Please, I'm
promo
begging
code.
you.
Slash Dan.
And but we're going to file it under, we're going to educate your children with the spillover tax money on allowing gambling. But we should point out to the audience that we are compromised here. We're in a business partnership with somebody, and it behooves us and our partners to get this passed. And if you want to support support the idea of being able to gamble on sports. Mike, you're asking people to go a few extra lengths here, so tell them again what they need to do.
The state is asking people to go extra steps here. So, and also, if you're a consumer and you say you don't even want to support our partners, but you just want a free and open marketplace, or you care about public education, what you want is all of these. It's way better to have all these options as a professional wagerer or an amateur or someone that just wants to take advantage of the best possible promos. A free and open marketplace allows for a competitive one, and you benefit from that seemingly. So go to FloridaEducationChampions.com to do so.
Can we explain to the audience what's funny about what you just did? Because you just passed over it so quickly, hoping that no one would pick up on that. If DraftKings had an opportunity to be the only place where you can bet in Florida,
everybody would.
Mike Ryan wouldn't be arguing for an open market anymore.
Correct.
I mean,
Just one player in
I
this
would be
game.
making that play to the consumer.
I got to be honest, though. If I'm Native American and my advisors are telling me to trust the American government on anything, I'm probably ignoring my advisors. Like, what do you mean? They could take stuff from us that they promised to give us.
Remember, Dan, the Seminole tribe of Florida is unconquered. They usually get their way. And I would push back on the notion that they thought they would have a monopoly. They were trying to do the Head Start thing, and they would probably contend, look, we're going to the negotiating table with all these people like DraftKings and say, you can get a cut of this, but they were looking for a kickback. And all the competitors were like, no, we're going to play this game through our lobbyists and with the federal government. And they actually caught an upset because the Seminole tribe, I can guarantee you, did not see this coming.
I want to talk
I don't know if you want to edit this, but I think that you may not want to say that the Seminole tribe is unconquered.
They say
They've been
unconquered.
conquered. Yes,
Well,
David's
no,
right.
No, they say this is a direct quote from the Seminole tribe, and it's actually put on the Florida State Seminole uniforms occasionally.
No, it's not.
Unconquered. It is a
Were
very
they
proud
were they
rally.
4-7
I would
this
take
year?
umbrage with that because they were completely conquered.
7 times.
Well,
in
they-
every
Seminoles,
way.
They're doing-
the Florida State Seminoles, or
They're doing well enough to actually buy Hard Rock and have a hugely profitable enterprise with all that. So they're doing
Now,
all
that's a
right.
question that would be poll-worthy to me. If the Seminoles could choose between owning the Hard Rock brand and having the casino or having all of the land that they had
Probably the
before they
land.
were conquered, what would they choose?
I'm going to
think
say
the land,
definitely
yeah.
the land and their freedoms, and we should
what
all
kind
pay
of
for our
poll
sins.
question is
It's a
that?
terrible one.
Yeah, no, we are
Because
imperial in nature. That's
We're
our
trying
origin
to
story.
say that the Seminoles. Listen, I'm not backing what the Seminoles are trying to do in terms of gambling because they're clearly trying to get all of the money from people who can't necessarily afford to lose it. But as far as gambling is concerned, what is available to people is what they want, and that is what we should be doing in America. Give the people what they want. People want to gamble because they want to win the lottery. They want to win money. They want to have a stake in the game. But there cannot be one company, one tribe, one person who benefits from that. It's got to be a free market system. But I would also say that what they're making the hoops that you're running through. What was that website again? AmericanEducation.com?
FloridaEducationChampions.com for our audience who requests their petitions and help out DraftKings, which in turn helps out us. Also, I'm going to push back on the unconquered part because the Seminoles are very proudly unconquered. If you go to their website, it's the header. So I'm not going to tell them that they're not unconquered.
Okay, that's called marketing, but okay. So I was just going to say that if Billy Corbin were here, we could talk about things on the ballot in Florida and all around the country and all these different hoops that you have to run through. Do you know that when we are looking for public money, let's say, and it has to go to the ballot box, the way that all of those things are worded is so highly negotiated for the sole purpose of confusing the voter, the American public, so that they will have a propensity to either do yes if we need a yes, thinking that it may be a no that they want, but they say yes because of the way things are worded. We use quadruple negatives. We use misdirection. We make the ballot questions 2 pages long, knowing that people won't read it, but knowing that when there is something long, you read the first sentence, and then you read the last sentence, and then you do the yes or the no. It is total manipulation. So when people go to Florida, Americans for Education, what is it?
FloridaEducationChampions.com.
FloridaEducationChampions.com.
That's like
I
Team
would
DK.
Do you know what they're supposed to fill out?
Yeah, no, there's all sorts of information to request a petition. It's not going on there and actually filling out a petition online. That would make too much sense. But politics in Florida are so convoluted that they make it difficult on purpose. And this is the uphill battle that competitors like DraftKings have to fight. I went to a Rolling Stones concert in Tampa. I got shoved in my face 7 petitions, and they were all about sports gambling, but I had to read through it thoroughly to know they were about sports gambling. And I, someone that is aligned with DraftKings, was so confused that I just pushed them all away because I didn't know which petition to sign. So that's why I'm getting the messaging out there if you're Team DK like us, because we are soulmates.
Can you also,
loquitur.
Mike, can you also get us Jason Robbins? I'd like to talk to him as the CEO of DraftKings, just on what the business is doing. I'd like to understand better, and our audience to understand a little better what they're doing and what we're doing with them. And I think they'd like to hear from that guy. Speaking of people in power, David, are you confused at all that there hasn't been more talks between the sides in Major League Baseball that would seem to represent progress on, lockout and work stoppage situation?
No, I was just surprised that Rob, when the lockout happened, the commissioner said that this lockout is a way to jumpstart the talks when he knew that that's not what the lockout was for. So there was no reason. What I've always said to him is don't say something that you know is going to come back to bite you in the ass. It's not necessary. You know there's going to be no negotiations until February at best. So don't say, because then you're giving your audience and your fans the false belief that there's actually progress. The reason why there have been no talks is what's going on. It's a microcosm of our country right now, and it's happening, go full circle for January 6th right now, where everyone is so busy being entrenched in their own position that they're unwilling to consider or even listen to anybody that says anything that is not pure confirmation bias. The lockout will not have talks because the players are not willing to budge. It is the owners who are not willing to budge, and the mistake that the fans have is they think that March 31st is a meaningful date, which it's not. March 31st is opening day for the 2022 season, according to the schedule. But there's not one player or one owner who believes that in order for there to be a World Series champion, in order for there to be postseason games and the revenue concomitant with those postseason games, in order for the players to get paid full salaries, there's not one of them on either side who believes that the season has to start on March 31st. And if the season doesn't have to start on March 31st, you don't need to have discussions now, because if you initiate discussions, that is looked at as weakness. Sadly, but it's looked at as weakness. Therefore, nobody wants to start, and therefore, nobody can finish.
Well, what the hell sense does that make, David? So when are they going to start? Like, it doesn't make any sense. I don't want to look weak to whom. If Manfred makes a call to the Players Association, to whom does that look weak?
Yeah, that's not how it starts, though. It's not Manfred and Clark who are making calls. It'll be with Hallam and Bruce Mayer, who are the number 2s, respectively, in the commissioner's office and in the Players Union. And what they are trying to do is actually have conversations about non-core economic issues, get those out of the way. But the problem is they can't even agree on those. It's like in one of my favorite episodes of MASH, when they're trying to end the Korean War and they can't agree, the North and South Korea, on the shape of the negotiating table. And it was so upsetting to Hawkeye, Alan Alda, because if you can't agree on that, how are you ever going to have peace? They cannot even agree on whether or not the sky is blue. And when that happens, you know you can't talk about serious issues because you're never going to be able to get there. And the reason why it makes perfect sense, and it is weakness, if you start, it's because then the other side says, oh, you're a little desperate, aren't you? You're worried that you're going to lose game revenue. You're worried that you're going to lose some broadcast revenue. You need to have a deal by March 31st. And baseball will never, owners will never give in that way.
MASH, a little overrated?
I can't even respond to that.
Why can't you respond? What do you mean?
Because it's the greatest show in my mind in television history.
No, that's not true. Come on. I mean,
I appreciate what you're saying. But again, that's a lot of
first
therapy.
take.
That's a lot of conversations. I watched MASH because my babysitter allowed me to watch MASH because my mom and stepdad would go out 5 to 6 nights a week.
Right.
And that was the only time I was allowed to watch TV. So I was allowed to watch MASH at 7:30 when they were out, and it became representative of my childhood.
6 p.m. Sports Center, Stump the Schwab. I mean, come on, Dave.
Do you have any other thoughts on January 6th that we did not cover that you think the audience needs to hear? And we've been talking recently. People will check out today. The Metalarkers are getting together and talking about just the business apocalypse that you have seen in football and basketball and just all over sports. Just everything has been laid so bare, Dave. I know that you are always saying nothing personal, that it's business, and you've been trying to tear that veneer for a while, but it's never been quite this overt where, oh, we don't care at all what we call the NBA. This is just going to feel like Lance Stevenson is going to go out there and dominate a game because we don't care at all as long as the games get played who's in the uniforms.
Well, that's always been the case. There's not an owner who ever has cared who's in the uniforms. That's why they tried replacement players, and then they saw that was too far. So they had to backtrack a little bit. And Lance Stevenson going 9 for 11 or scoring 30 points in a loss to the Nets by 8 points, which was a push, I believe. At least that's what it was on Nothing Personal, which was my pick of the day. I don't believe that that has ever informed an owner how to act, that there was any concern about it's all exchangeable. We viewed players as interchangeable parts. They come and they go, and what continues is the front of the uniform, not the back, and we're totally fine with that. But January 6th ties into that because that's supposed to be the view of us as Americans, that we may not be happy with who's in an elected office at a particular moment, but that is just a moment in time. You have to look at the broader picture always, the value of the underlying asset, which is the value of America, the value of your team, the value of America. There are going to be Republicans, there's going to be Democrats, there's going to be people who are anti-abortion, pro-choice, who agree with climate change, who don't agree with climate change. And I did this on this morning's Nothing Personal, where I spent 20 minutes talking about my greatest fear about January 6th is not what happened January 6th of 21. It's what's happening January 6th of 22. And what's happening January 6th of 22, and you've got President Biden who's going to tell you to fear for your democracy, to fear for your republic. You've got Jimmy Carter who's going to write something in the New York Times saying it's the end of the world as we know it. But the reality is the end of the world comes when people are so entrenched in their sides that they believe that it is better to have nothing than to have what the other side has. That's the fear that I have, that there's going to be enough people on the fringe that the fringe starts bleeding into the middle.
Well, it already has. I mean, when you just described the disagreeing over the shape of a table in MASH, you were describing the place that we are in as Americans, it feels like, where people have taken their sides and can't agree, mask mandates, anything. And so
but we're not at the edge of a cliff yet.
I know, but if they're that selfish on masks and mandates and that divided on masks and mandates, can you imagine what it's going to look like when the things we're fighting over are food and currency, and freedom?
So that's where we can't get to. But the way to not get there is not by having editorials written or speeches given saying that's where we are. The way to do it is to explain what Mitt Romney said. I really hope people read it. And this is where I am. And I don't discuss where I am politically very often at all on very many issues. But where I am is I don't agree with any extreme, either left or right, because those extremes actually don't care about their positions. They care about being in control of the middle. And I like being in the middle.
George Michael, Sports Machine, the sports reporters, Tilt.
Oh, Tilt.
Tilt.
They call him the Matador. I haven't thought about Tilt in 20 years. David, you probably covered this on Nothing Personal with David Samson, but I think there's a very interesting thing happening with the Washington football team. I mean, when can you not say that? But did you read the letter that Jalen Hurts sent on behalf of those fans? That it appears that Daniel Snyder has yet another massive problem on his hands because those fans that fell weren't offered medical assistance. He could be liable.
Yeah, it's just money. So, first of all, I did a full topic on this on a show this week. Jalen Hurts did not write the letter. Antonio Brown did not write that statement. The only part of the statement by Antonio Brown that he wrote was the last line. Business gonna be booming. That was it.
There were a lot of grammatical errors.
That was pure lawyer speak, putting him in a position with his union to make sure that he is properly paid. And that going forward, there are issues of medical treatment that are dealt with as part of the collective bargaining agreement. In terms of Jalen Hurts, I would like to know, and I said this on the show, he said to whom it may concern, and then publicized a letter. That's not how it should be done. When players have a beef, you go to the team president, you go to the GM, you go to the owner, and those owners, presidents, GMs, go to the owners, presidents, GMs of other teams. You don't do it publicly through Twitter. And the line of that letter is when he said the possible lingering injuries that these people suffered. That's a legal word there, Jalen. Lingering injuries equals dollars. It means, oh, my neck. Did you read about the guy who fell off, went to the doctor, and then left with a neck brace? It's like a movie. You put the neck brace on trying to get 10 grand. That's what they're after. Daniel Snyder is going to call Tanya Snyder and Roger Goodell. They're going to have a pool of money. Snyder's going to say, I got 250 grand. That is the amount of money I will allocate to these people who fell. Split it however you want. He'll tell his lawyers. Neck brace, 10 grand. Back pain, $7,500. Lack of ability to have sex with your wife, $12,572.
It's itemized?
They will itemize it, I promise you. Pay it out, and that'll be the end. But the NFL is going to make sure that now it's been screwed up for everyone who likes to lean over the tunnel and get a high five or get a sweatband thrown at them, because now there will be no access for fans to hang over the tunnel in any stadium in any sport.
I love the old school writing of a letter. Just complaining. Jalen Hurts, I don't care where he puts it.
Little pen to paper.
Just the whole thing. I'm assuming it wasn't pen to paper. I'm assuming that he just I
want to hear from the player. I'm with you.
I think he just typed it up well, but I'm just longing for the day when someone would write a sternly worded letter. I didn't have it being the Eagles quarterback after a wall collapse. I'm not even sure how fair it is to take out Washington as an organization on this, because I feel like it could have happened in a whole lot of places. And that one,
but it happened there.
That stadium is a dump.
Okay.
That had nothing to do with the stadium. People are saying that.
I haven't seen any other stadiums where sewage is spilling onto the fans since the Orange Bowl.
Was it definitely sewage?
It was human waste.
You know that for sure.
I know what pee and poo-poo water looks like.
And you were there, and it smelled like that.
No, but first-hand accounts say that it smelled like that.
I'm sorry. You have a first-hand account from someone who had crap spill on them.
Secondhand.
Really? Okay.
That's what Twitter said.
Oh, well, in that case.
Twitter said it was shit and poopy water.
True. I understand that people are saying, what should Jalen Hurts have done to express his frustration?
Are you representing the Washington football team? It was very obviously shit water.
Okay. All I know is they want a new stadium. And the way to get a new stadium has nothing to do with having people fall through a railing. It has nothing to do with having soil or soiled water spill on you. It has to do with getting public financing. And that's the funniest part, is that Dan and Tanya are going to try to get public financing, and then they're going to be told no because of the Marlins.
That's human waste.
Yeah.
Any coincidence that they announce, hey, new team name and new logo dropping next month?
No, they did that purposely, and they really are their PR, and this is hard to say. They may have the worst PR of any team in any sport, because what they do is so obvious. Now, if they end up being the Washington Admirals, that will be one of the funniest things of all time, that they announced they're going to do it February 2nd. But then they had a website that was linked to WashingtonAdmirals.com. It can't be true. It can't be.
I want to play for you. It can't be true that they'd keep their name as the Washington football team for a year because they forgot to secure the GoDaddy domains that they needed for all the other Washington names. But let's play for David, because he mentioned that business is booming in the Antonio Brown. The last sentence of the Antonio Brown letter that wasn't written by Antonio Brown. That last sentence, though, reminded us of what we believe to be the greatest cameo ever, which includes, of course, Antonio Brown.
Happy 38th birthday. And I hear this your second anniversary wedding. I hear you've been working really hard as a defense attorney, and your birthday is here. Happy birthday. We celebrate you today. Hope your birthday is booming.
Boy, that's $100 well worth it.
What is the movie that you're reviewing for us this week?
Am I allowed to review Don't Look Up on Metalark?
Of course.
Will DraftKings allow it?
honestly. You have to give all honest critique of anything, no matter what the conflicts and allegiances might be.
Well, I haven't worked with Adam yet, but I would tell Adam, were he here right now, that I am disappointed with Don't Look Up. I was disappointed with the casting of Jennifer Lawrence and Leonardo DiCaprio. I thought that they were overpaid and misplayed, and I thought that he got lazy with the dialogue. And this is because he has set such a high bar for himself, Adam McKay has, and the movies he has done that are so smart and witty and informative and important. And he was trying to make a point, but he got so busy in this movie making the point that he forgot to take the route to make it that he took in all of his previous movies. He started at the end. He made it so obvious to the viewer where he stood on this issue that it made the journey not worthwhile. So when I'm watching Don't Look Up, I thought of three things. One, how much input did Netflix have in both the casting, in the budget, in the script, in the filming, and in the editing? Two, was this a payday for Adam where he had to make a deliverable, where he was taking advantage of his success, which many actors do and many writers do, and I'm all for it because it is business. But did he know that going in? Three, when he saw the final movie, did he say to himself, I did a disjustice, misjustice, injustice.
Disservice?
A disservice, thank you.
Chris Cody, a disservice and an
related to all of
injustice,
that right there.
disjustice.
Just happened. You turned into me for a minute.
That I just had a moment. I did a disservice to a topic that means so much to me, and I had a platform that is so large. Everybody's watching this, and they're going to leave only by saying the movie stunk, not by actually having good discourse, intellectual discourse about the very subject that he was trying to inform his audience about.
I feel like I can answer all those questions for you, though. He had complete control of the movie. He made the movie that he wanted to. He was trying to make a broad movie that had a lot of star power that would be seen by a lot of people who would then have some awareness about climate and crisis. And he's very happy that it has reached specifically the scientific community with a lot of applause. And he's very pleased, not just with the fact that it's the most successful movie eyes watching something in the history of Netflix, but he made a movie that was meant to be broad, that he thought was going to get a bad rating just because where we are in this country, 30% of people on anything that you make that can be perceived as political are going to give it a sour rating.
Who needs McKay?
I did not.
That's a lot of
Hold
information.
on. That's insulting, Dan. I did not give the movie a sour rating because of where I stand.
I'm just saying that he was expecting what it is that happened in terms of rating, because you can't make a movie in this climate that has any kind of political undertones that's not going to be disliked by a whole lot of people.
But the people who are disliking it are the people who want to like it.
I
went into that movie expecting that this would make The Big Short look like a bad movie.
And you are entitled to your own discernments there. I'm not dismissing your critique saying that that's the way it is. I'm saying that he went in knowing that he was going to get a rating that was going to be 70-30 split, no matter the movie he made on this topic.
But what people are saying is the movie was bad, not the message.
Some people are saying the movie is bad.
Okay, I'm saying the movie was bad, not the message. Mm-hmm. And that he had a chance to be so much more impactful. And if what you're saying is true, and you know him, so it obviously is true, if he goes to bed at night and says, it's the most watched movie on Netflix ever, I accomplished exactly what I set out to accomplish. The scientific community is in favor of what I did. They're bringing attention to what I want to be brought attention to. That's not the Adam McKay who is the brilliant movie maker. That's someone who's a political activist. And I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in him as a movie maker, bringing attention to things that are important to be brought attention to. And he has a chance to actually educate, inform, and change how people view subjects. And that's what he's done with previous movies. And he didn't accomplish that in this movie.
Polarizing film in terms of critical reception. It's got a 54 on Rotten Tomatoes. Audience score is actually 77 for him.
Okay. What does that mean?
I'm just adding content.
I will tell you
Never mind.
one of the things that
Those
was
guys are like, was it shit water? I mean, were they unconquered? Who shat in your cereal this morning?
I'm sorry, was that a question?
Yeah.
Yes, it
Yes,
was.
it was.
It ended with,
Yes.
oh,
What happened to
was
you?
that
Yes.
a question? It very clearly was interrogative.
Guillermo, put it on the poll at LeBatard Show. Did someone shit in David Samson's cereal this morning?
Do you know that I eat dry cereal with peanuts every single day?
That sounds like shit.
No, I didn't. It's actually
Peanuts
so good.
is what he
Special
said.
K with dry roasted peanuts.
Host of Nothing Personal, David Samson. Thank you for joining us as you do every
He
week.
just described Shittios like something that's got dry cereals, like dog turds with peanuts in them.